All right, I think I got all the controls. Thank you all for coming. As I said, this is, as the name implies, this is the refresher course. So this is a joint project by the Baton Rouge Audubon Society and the Louisiana Ornithological Society. If you know me, you've probably taken a class or know that I'm the president of the Audubon Society as well as the education chair. And then I'm also an education coordinator for LOS. So this is a project of both. Oops, all of your. All right, my slides won't advance. Figure out what's going on here. Okay. So this is a refresher course. This class is not designed to be an introduction to birding. So hopefully you have some familiarity, you know, which end of the binoculars to look in, you know, have an idea of how to use a field guide for some ID. And hopefully, you know, some of the more common birds so that when you go out this spring, you can, you know, love your cardinals, your Carolina wrens, your blue jays, but pay special attention to all of these migrants that are about to arrive because things are about to get crazy. So we're talking about spring migration. And we like to refer to these birds as our birds, all of these birds that come through Louisiana or to Louisiana for the spring and summer. But they are no more ours than they are those people that live in Central America and South America because they spend quite a bit of their life down there as well. So we have our birds, our year-round birds like our cardinals, our blue jays, our Carolina wrens, but a whole lot more that are about to join us for the summer. So why do birds migrate? It's believed that they do this because there's less competition for breeding grounds. There's less competition for resources. And in the summer in North America, as it gets warmer, there are lots of insects, lots of vegetation, lots of those things that these birds need. So they move north. They've evolved to migrate to ensure their breeding success. And apparently it's worth it because it is now built into their DNA. They pretty much have to migrate. They get this urge to go, and it's embedded in their makeup. And even though it's an enormously hazardous undertaking. So along that route that they're about to take, that 2,000 or 3,000 mile route, they're going to encounter a lot of hazards, weather, especially wind. In the spring, we get those lines of thunderstorms that move through. In the fall, we get hurricanes. So, you know, it's a hazardous undertaking. There's no doubt about it. And then, of course, we've created lots of impediments for that journey in terms of buildings, development, cats, etc.
Yeah, you took one right outside the kitchen window.
Hang on just a second. All right. So our earliest migrant is generally regarded to be the purple martin, which arrives from its wintering ground at the end of January or early February. And purple martin should already be, if you have a purple martin house up in this area, you should already be seeing martins, although you may see some more arrive over the next month or so, and they sort of stage themselves out. They also leave early, so the martins start nesting in January, February, and they're done by June and July, and they're headed back to Brazil, and in South America. So overall, things kind of stage up in March with the peak of migration for neotropical songbirds being in mid-April, and it tapers off drastically by early May. Fall migration is a different thing. So in spring, all of these birds are hopped up on hormones. They need to get to their breeding ground so they can start making babies. Very important. And so spring migration tends to be this flood. Fall migration is more of a trickle. It's a slower pace. It may take several months. It's really hard to define a peak of fall migration because it tends to start even in as early as August with some species all the way through October. So, and then fall and winter are the times to find vagrants. So these birds that may have taken a wrong turn in their migratory path and show up in unexpected places. So let's look at one of our common winter warblers here. And you can see on the map, the orange color shows breeding, which is generally the summer months. The yellow shows migration. So that is usually the spring and the fall. And then the blue would be our winter or non-breeding. So this is a bird that generally goes to southern climates in the winter, all the way down into Central America, but certainly here in Louisiana stays all winter. So if you look in the field guide, however, for this warbler, the Blackburnian warbler, you can see a map that looks like this. So this shows that it breeds up in the boreal forest in Canada and the northeast part of the US. And in migration, it can be found just basically in all of the eastern part of the US. But where is this bird in the winter? And what the book doesn't show, now our field guides generally are for North America. And that's why they don't show where these birds are in winter, because this particular species goes to South America. So it may be that our field guides someday are revised to show you their whole life cycle, because it's really important for us to know where they go throughout the year. But this particular bird, actually, all of the population of Blackburnian warbler basically goes to the west coast of South America and spends the winter on the western side of the Andes Mountains. So if we look at this map, see if this will play. So this is a tool that was created by Cornell Lab of Ornithology based on eBird data. So it's based on data that birders provided. There is now over 16 years of data that's gone into this database, this worldwide database that has created these tools. So what this map shows is that this is abundance. So the yellow is less abundance, the purple is greater abundance, and these are the weeks of the year. So I'm going to press play here, and you're going to actually see these birds move throughout the year. So here they are in Western South America in January, February, March, April, May, June, July. They're all up in the Canada, basically, in the northeast part of the US, and then back over Central America down to South America. Some may fly over the Gulf, some may island hop through the Caribbean, but they all end up down here in South America. Let's see, somebody is. Bob, did you have a question? You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. We just couldn't see, or at least I couldn't see the animation. I just see the PowerPoint, I think.
So it's not switching over to that for the Zoom?
Not in my experience.
Yeah, I probably would have to stop sharing the PowerPoint and start sharing the different screens. So
Yeah, I'm not seeing it either.
yeah. Hang on just a second. Oops. All right, can you see it now? Can you see the eBird webpage?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let me go through that again. So what we're seeing here is these are the weeks of the year. This is the relative abundance from less to more. And I'm going to press play here, and it's going to show how these birds move throughout the year. So this is June, this is summer, and basically all of the birds are in the northern part of North America. And then they move August, September, October, there they are back in Central America. And you can see they just sort of appeared in Mexico. So they all basically went across the Gulf of Mexico to get to on their southern journey. And a great many of them, it looks like most of them take the Florida and easterly route as well, although they certainly show up in Louisiana. So again, this is based on eBird data from a number of years and is really important from a conservation perspective, because if we understand the entire life cycle of these birds, then we know all of the areas that we need to conserve, not just their breeding grounds, not just their wintering grounds, but all of their stopover habitat as well, or else they're not going to be able to get where they need to go. So really important tool. All right.
Thank you for sharing. That was wonderful.
Sure. PowerPoint. All right. Weather is very important to these birds as they are trying to fly north in the spring. If a storm system does crop up with winds from the north, the birds will often land and wait out the storm. And this is what we refer to as a fallout. So basically the birds are carried by south winds, and they may fly right over the coast, over the whole state if the south winds are strong enough, because they've got a long way to go. They're not going to stop if they don't have to. But if a north wind comes along or a storm system comes along, it'll push them down to the ground, and it's referred to as a fallout. This is bad for birds, good for birders. If you're on the ground when that happens, it can be quite amazing. So these strong southern winds may cause birds to just bypass the coast and go as far as they can. There are some apps that actually show you the wind speeds in different areas, and these can be useful for trying to anticipate when would be a good birding day. If you see that the wind is going to change from the south to the north, then that may cause an event. So something to keep in mind. As I said, bad for birds, good for birders. So when we see this on the radar in April, this is the time to get to the coast. The best time to be there is just after the front passes through. So we were down on the coast a couple of years ago. We birded in the morning and there was a storm system coming. So we retreated to the camp and waited. We were actually watching a birding movie while we were waiting. And I got a call from a friend who said, Jane, they're here. And we went out and we had 17 species of warblers on the street on Grand Isle that afternoon, up in the live oak trees. So this is an interesting application. So if you remember, for those of us of a certain age, you remember seeing the newscaster on the 6 o'clock news, the weatherman actually would come out and he would show you the radar, right? And show you that circle, and it would pass over some stuff. And he would say, oh, that's not rain, that's ground clutter. Well, actually, that could have been birds, because radar picks up objects like birds, even dragonflies and other insects. And birds, many songbirds migrate at night. And so at the 6 o'clock news time is just about the time all these birds are lifting off to head on their nightly migration. The bird people clued into this, the ornithology people clued into this, and they created a tool to predict when birds are coming. And can also tell you, and that based on radar data, can tell you basically how many birds might have passed over your area the previous night, which is a great thing to wake up and say, okay, how many birds went over East Baton Rouge Parish last night. And if it was a really, really good night, then it might be a day to get outside and go look for some birds. So I'm going to switch to these migration maps to show you. So I'll have to click on that and then stop my share and reshare here. All right, so this is, as you can see tonight, right? Night of March 19th, 2023, 10 million birds are predicted to be on the move. And you can see by the colors on the map, where there is high migration, it'll be white, low migration will be blue. So we're still in the less intense parts of migration. There will be times when the whole part of the entire Gulf South is basically white and yellow, indicating that a whole lot of birds are predicted to come over. So this shows three nights in a row, night of March 20th, and there's a little bit pinker. And then here's the 21st and even pinker. So more birds, 34 million birds predicted 2 days from now. For the whole country, yes. Or the area that they're depicting here. So the other thing that you can look at, that's the forecast maps. They have the migration dashboard. We put in Louisiana. Yes, we put in East Baton Rouge. Okay, so this showed last night, 2,700 birds passed over. It shows how high they were flying, the altitude and the speed that they were flying. It also shows you what kind of birds they were, the expected migrants. So on one day in April last year, when I looked at this, that number instead of 2,700 was 1.3 million for East Baton Rouge Parish on one night. In the spring, yes. As I said, in the spring is much more condensed than in the fall. So, and it shows you what kind of birds. So it tells you exactly what to go look for. It says there should be a whole lot of birds out there and this is what they are. So very helpful tool. So do spend some time exploring that. It's birdcast.info is the website. Birdcast.info, I-N-F-O, as in forecast. It's right here, birdcast.info. And this is another product of Cornell. All right, another way, another tool that you can use to know when your favorite bird species are arriving is are the charts in the back of the Bird Finding Guide to Louisiana. And I did not bring mine, dang it. Did anybody have theirs with them? Bird Finding Guide to Louisiana. So this is a printed book that basically tells you where to find birds in Louisiana. There you go. Thank you, Linda. It breaks it down by region. Here, so you can hear me. This book, The Birder's Guide to Louisiana, breaks it down by region. And then within each region, it'll give you particular birding destinations and give you turn-by-turn directions and tell you what birds you're going to find when you get there. So an incredibly helpful book. But in the back, they have these charts. And you can see the chart on the screen here. I know it's tiny and hard to read, but basically it's by species. It's North Louisiana, South Louisiana, and it tells you to the date, to the week, when the birds are going to be arriving. So if you're looking for your first prothonotary warbler, for example, you can scan down until you find prothonotary warbler and see when it is expected to arrive in the state. So another way to do this, which is a little bit more real time, is to use eBird bar charts. This is the same kind of idea, but this is, the printed book was was done almost 10 years ago, I want to say. So it's static to that date. The eBird data is current, and you can actually give it a date range and show, when have all of the, if you can look at just all the marches of every year that there's eBird data and see when birds are showing up. So it shows you by month, and then each rectangle is basically a week in that month. So if you look at the northern Parula, for example, which is the one at the top, it shows that few are going to show up the first week of March. By the second week of March, even more. By the third week of March, they're pretty much on site. And that is absolutely true. Because I found the first one at the Joyce Boardwalk, I think on March, was it the 5th, maybe even a little bit earlier than that. So, but they're all out there singing, and the females have arrived and they're sparring and setting up shop. So, so this is really handy for figuring out when your favorite bird is going to show up. Location, location, location. So if you want to know where to go, basically, if you're in Louisiana, anywhere can be a good place. There will be days in the spring where the interior is better than the coast because of the winds, right? Those birds have flown right over the coast and landed in East Baton Rouge Parish or landed in Shreveport. And you'll look on eBird and find that they had more variety in Shreveport that day than they did down on Grand Isle. So it just, it varies, but you got to get outside and look for them. So highly recommend that you go to the coast. Cameron Parish is the #1 bird parish in the state. It's a large rural parish. It's on the coast. There are lots of places to go, a lot of hot spots. Our sanctuary, Pavito Woods, is down in Cameron Parish, and we've recorded over 300 species at Pavito Woods, which is 40+ acres of one of the last coastal oak Chenier remnants that exists on the coast. But it's a magnet for these birds that are flying across the Gulf. They've just flown 600 miles. They're hungry, they're tired, they're thirsty. They see this little patch of green and they come down and check it out. You do have to plan ahead if you go to Cameron Parish. It's okay right now, but it was devastated just a couple of years ago. I can't remember which storm it was, but the little town of Creole, if you're familiar, is gone. I mean, it erased it. It's not there anymore. And a lot of the camps at Holly Beach and such have been rebuilt. There are stores that are open. For a while you couldn't find any stores or gas or anything, and now you can find food and gas and things like that. But anytime you go to Cameron, it's good to do your homework before you head over there. And one of the best resources is the tourist board for Cameron Parish. Grand Isle. So another coastal site. Grand Isle is our only inhabited barrier isle, and unfortunately it is recovering still from Ida. It made me cry the first time I went down there after Ida, because so much of it was destroyed. The state park is still closed, unfortunately. They hope to open it this summer. A lot of the residents are still living in the park is the reason that one of the main reasons that it's not open. So they're still rebuilding homes. But the good news about Grand Isle is it's not that big. You really can't get lost. If the Tourist Commission office is open, they have a map that actually shows you the birding sites, the street names and things like that. But it's pretty easy to find, and eBird is a big help with that. So generally people tend to be birder friendly down there. There are yards that are specified as welcome to birders, and they have a sign, and they expect you to come into their yard and watch their feeders if you want to see their rose-breasted grosbeaks or indigo buntings. If you can find a mulberry tree, that's what you want to do. So on Grand Isle, the motels are designed really for fisher people. They're kind of cardboard furniture and linoleum floors. The houses, rental houses, if you can get them, are a better bet. There are a few RV parks. There are a couple of restaurants. There are now 2 grocery stores. So some accommodations. These birds are looking for food and water. This is one of our water drips at Pavito Woods. It is very popular. So a lot of people will just sit and watch the water drip, and birds come in and out, in and out, in and out. That is an old large satellite dish that we have reclaimed as a water feature. Mulberry trees. So plants that fruit in late spring are perfect. And I've heard a report from our sanctuary manager that the mulberry trees in Pavito are looking great. I have literally more than once just taken a lawn chair with me to Cameron, to Pavito Woods, or to Grand Isle, found a mulberry tree and planted my butt in the lawn chair and just waited for the birds to arrive. And it is not disappointing. So definitely the way to do it. They're coming in, they're looking for something to eat. Some of the tools that you're going to need, of course, you're going to need a field guide. And a pro tip, I try to stress this in my classes, but I will re-stress it. The time to get familiar with your field guide is before you're trying to figure out a bird. Okay. You want to get used to the structure of it, how it's organized, so that you have an idea of where to look in this book before you're actually trying to ID a bird. And plus, there's a whole lot of great information in here. Ken Kaufman's introduction to birds and birding is just an excellent essay on the whole business. And so it's really worthwhile to read it. And then as you're, if you're introduced to a new bird, for example, if you see your first Canada warbler, go look up the Canada warbler and read about him, because that will help you get that bird in your head for the future. There are some specialty guides like the warbler guide, which I did. This is a whole book, just the warblers. I also wanted to mention the Crossley guide. I know you folks at home can't see this, but the Crossley guide is a different kind of field guide. Richard Crossley basically includes photos of the bird in every possible position you can imagine. He includes male, female, juvenile plumage, and he includes distant birds. I mean, some of these are just a speck versus a bird very close up. So all the different possible views of a single bird, so that as you're trying to identify a bird, it can be very helpful, with, of course, the descriptive information and the map as well. Obviously not a book that you put in your pocket and carry around with you. This is more of a desk reference, but it's a really good one. This one is for Eastern Europe. The Warbler Guide now has an app, which is fun to play with. So I'm going to see if I can demonstrate it for you. But basically, the information that's in the book is contained in an app. So it's just warblers, as the name implies, and it gives you lots of information about the birds. So let's see. Oops. For you folks at home, I'm probably going to have to stop sharing the okay. Probably have to stop the share and start another share with my phone. Yeah. All right, you're now looking at my phone. So this is the app. So it shows you all the different warblers. It has both their bright plumage for spring and their dull plumage for fall. So if we pick a particular warbler, let's pick the black-throated green. It shows you from underneath, which is often how you're seeing warblers. Shows you a different view from underneath, including the tail, which can be very helpful. This is just a drawing that shows the tail. I have another slide that explains more about that, but you can see contrasted with the black and white that has the black chevrons. and the black-throated gray, which shows pure white underneath, as opposed to the black-throated green, which shows a little bit of yellow up toward the wing. So another feature of this app is the 3D view. I click on that in the upper right corner, and now I can move the bird around and see him in 3D, which sometimes your view is this, right? It's just the wing and a little bit of the head, or maybe like this, and so you can move the bird around and see if you can match what you were seeing or the picture that you got to see if it might be the bird that you're looking at. So that can be very helpful. Whoop. And then here's a close-up of the head and then the side view. So for each bird, it gives all this comparison species, so other species that might look similar. And then it has the overview. Now, the cool thing about the overview is you see this at the top. It shows you the basic colors of the bird, the underside of the tail, its silhouette, shows you where in the US it's going to be found. So this is an east of the Rockies bird. Shows you where in the tree it's going to be found. So typically, this is a mid-canopy bird. Okay, so there are some warblers that stay low. There are some warblers that stay way at the top of the canopy, and there are some mid-story, and this is one that is mid-story. Now, birds do not read. They did not read the field guide. They don't follow the rules necessarily. Can't make that go away. Nope. I'm trying to do it on the screen instead of on my phone. So, you know, I'm not going to say a hooded warbler is generally a low warbler. I'm not going to say you're never going to see a hooded warbler up mid canopy because, like I said, birds can't read. So they may do what they want to do. But generally speaking, this is what is the truth. It gives some description information about the bird, shows the underside, the female, lots of great information about the species. Now, another cool thing about this app, if you see a warbler that you're trying to identify, you can paint it with the app, with the filter. So you can say, the bird I saw had a yellow throat. It had a blue wing with white wing bars and a blue head with an eye arc. So I tell it all of those things and then click on filter, and it tells me that it was a northern parula. So now this assumes you get all those things right. I've been frustrated sometimes because I'll paint it and I'll expect it to show me a particular bird and I haven't got the painting just right and it doesn't match what it thinks, you know. So, but generally this can be very useful. So, and you can just use like just yellow throats, you know, just all I saw was that it had a yellow throat, and it will show you just the warblers that have a yellow throat or whatever. So that can be very, very helpful. And then you reset the filter that way. It has songs, so it can play songs. So lots of good things to play with here. You pick your location. So I picked the Southeast because we have different warblers here than they do out west. They have many fewer warblers in the west. So you want to be sure to pick the Southeast as your area. And then spring, summer versus fall and winter, because many warblers change their plumage from spring and summer and to fall and winter. So that's a fun tool to play with. All right, let's share. Get back here. All right. There we go. We just did that exercise with this bird right here. Yellow fruit, blue on the wings, blue on the head, northern parula. So warbler neck, this is a theme. Any warblers are up there in the canopy and you find yourself with your head like this for hours at a time looking at the warblers. So do your exercises, lots of this before you get out there. But also a pro tip, when you're looking up with binoculars, bend your knees as you're looking up because it really helps. It puts your thighs to work basically and helps us to support your back, and it'll make it much easier for you in the long run. This is a page from the warbler guide that I have here that shows the undersides of warblers, which is very helpful because, as I said, oftentimes you're looking up at them from underneath. So this is helpful to know the difference. Especially if that's the only view that you get, because sometimes you can tell which bird it is based on the underside of the tail. So Merlin is an app from Cornell Lab of Ornithology, a free app, and you install the pack for your area. And if you see a bird, you can put in the colors, the activity of the bird, the size of the bird, and it may be able to identify it by answering those questions. If you can get a photo, Merlin can identify with a photo. Merlin can also identify with sound, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So here we have this bird. We see it on Grand Isle. We're going to do this exercise with Merlin on my phone. Go back around. Stop and share. Yeah. All right, we're going to start the bird ID. So this is Grand Isle. Oops. Louisiana. And the date is April 15th. The size is smaller than a sparrow. And the main colors are yellow, black, and gray. Allows you to pick up to 3 colors. And I saw it in a tree or a bush. So now it's going to create a list of the possible birds. And there we have a match there, the second one on the page, the magnolia warbler. So that can be helpful. And that can be more helpful than actually trying to take a picture of a magnolia warbler with your phone while it's bopping around in that bush. Because it's likely you're not getting a very good picture. Merlin's pretty good, but it's not that good. So, all right, let me go back to. All right, birding by ear, identifying birds by sound. So you can find mnemonic references. So, for example, a list of all of the warblers and the little sayings that go with each one of those warblers. Sometimes that's helpful for some people. With warblers, it's tougher than for other birds. With some birds, like the eastern towhee, for example, the mnemonic for the sound of the eastern towhee for the song is drink your tea, drink your tea. And if you hear that bird sing, that's exactly what it sounds like when it's up and singing. So that can be helpful. Your electronic field guides have sound. There are learning CDs that you can play, and it'll say blue jay, and then it'll list a bunch of calls of the blue jay and golden winged warbler, and then list all the songs. I've never found that particularly helpful. That doesn't help it get it into my head very well, but those certainly are available. There's a set of articles that National Audubon did a couple of years ago on birding by ear, and I have a link here that you may find helpful. But basically, if you search for Audubon birding by ear, there's a series of articles that may be helpful. It looks like it's from 2017. This is hot off the press. So Derek Salmon, who's a birder who's studying here in Louisiana, has a YouTube channel called Badgerland Birding, because he's from Wisconsin Badgers. And he just created this video for YouTube for learning warbler songs. And so basically he's got little video clips of each of the warblers, and he tells you what the mnemonic is. He plays the song of the warbler and tells you a little bit about the song and about the bird. So that can be very helpful. You can use tools like Merlin Sound ID, or there's another one called BirdNet that it basically records the sound of the birds that are singing and analyzes the sound it's hearing and identifies the bird that way. I will caution you that while this is really fun, it is not always accurate. So human sounds, ambient sounds can mess with it. You have to be careful because blue jays and mockingbirds and thrashers, which are mimics, can cause Merlin to identify a bunch of birds that are not currently in your yard. They probably have been in your yard at some point because the mockingbird learned them, but they may not currently be in your yard. So I always caution people to actually see the bird, especially if you're going to report it, and especially if it's rare. There have been some colossal, hilarious mistakes made by Merlin. My favorite is one, somebody in Florida reported an Atlantic puffin. Now, some of that is on Merlin, okay, because Merlin should know, it ties into eBird and it should know where you are. So in my mind, Merlin never should have been able to identify an Atlantic puffin in Florida. So there's that, okay? It should only give you areas that are somewhat expected in your area of the world, your part of the world. But it identified a bird as an Atlantic puffin in Florida. The Atlantic puffin makes it sound like this. So what does that sound like? Somebody trying to start their car, right? And so Merlin picked that up, identified it as an Atlantic puffin. And there have been some other cases, like a couple of years ago, everybody was hearing brown creepers, which make a very high-pitched sound. And undoubtedly, there's something in our cityscapes that makes a sound that's similar to what it's identifying as a brown creeper. So just know that it's a work in progress. Now, if you've ever used SoundHound or Shazam to identify a song, right? You hold up your phone and it listens and it identifies the song that's playing on the overhead speakers or in a movie. That is pretty much 100% if the song is known to it, because the recording is always going to be the same. There's never a variation. With birds, there are variations, individual variations, regional variations, et cetera, et cetera. So not 100% reliable. And using playback, speaking of sound. So in spring particularly, sound is an incredibly powerful tool. So birds, all birds have a call and a song, and the song is used generally by the male to establish and defend his territory. So in the spring and summer, he's on territory, right? So he has already told all the other hooded warblers or whatever kind of bird he is, the yellow warbler in this case, that this is his territory and you need to keep out. So if you walk into his territory and start playing the yellow warbler song, he is going to react. There's no doubt about that. He will react. But you're taking him away from the things that he is supposed to be doing, from helping to feed those babies, from feeding his mate, from defending that nest territory. So just know what you're doing, be mindful of that, and don't stress the bird out. And I would recommend during breeding season, if you know that this bird is on territory, not to use sound at all. If you do use it very sparingly. Don't stress the bird out. There was a painted bunting at Pennington Biomedical a couple of years. Well, it's been there for a couple of years. And once the word got out that there was a painted bunting over there, everybody and their mama wanted to go over to Pennington to see this painted bunting. And unfortunately, playback was used so much that the bird eventually left because it just got pushed out, basically. So you want to be careful. There are some places where sound is not allowed. So places where there are lots of birders, you are not allowed to use sound. There's other places where you should not, even if it is technically not prohibited, but I bird by ear, right? So I'm listening for the birds, and I'm going to identify and write down the birds I hear as well as I see. So if I'm down and on Grand Isle at the Grilletta tract and I'm listening for birds and you're over here playing warbler songs, I'm writing down everything you're playing on your phone. Okay. So, so you want to be mindful of that. If you're birding someplace where nobody else goes, that's one thing. If you're birding where there are other people, I would suggest not using sound at all. All right, let's look at some birds. So we're going to start with warblers because why not? They're fun. They're pretty. So a warbler is a songbird in the family Corulidae, many of which have brightly colored plumage, such as the redstart or a yellowthroat. They're also called wood warblers. That was kind of the traditional name for them. And warblers can be confusing. This is pages from Roger Torrey Peterson's field guide, and he labels it at the top, confusing fall warblers. Warblers are more confusing in the fall than they are in the spring, fortunately. Well, not so fortunate in the fall, but for us in the spring, it's okay because they have their spring plumage, their fancy plumage, they're a little bit easier to tell apart. In the fall, it can be challenging. So we're going to start with the easier ones, pretty much the warblers that you can't mistake for anything else. This is the black and white warbler. Just as the name implies, it's black and white. No yellow on this little guy anywhere. And you can see how he acts, right? He is going to be crawling around on the trunk and the branches, often underneath the branches, pecking at insects on the branch, like a nuthatch. The description of the way he moves is often described as very much like a nuthatch. So this is one that is not going to be up in the canopy going through leaves. It's not going to be on the ground going through leaves. He's going to be walking on trunks and branches. And for new birders, this is often a favorite because you can tell which one it is. It's easy. It does nest in Louisiana from the central to the northern part of the state. And the song is a high-pitched, thin, wheezy, wheezy, wheezy. So some people describe it as a squeaky bicycle wheel. Let me play it for you real quick. So some of you in this room will not be able to hear that, not because it's not loud enough, but because you've lost the upper register. And if you're one of those that has lost the upper register, you're going to be at a real disadvantage for warblers, because a lot of the sound occurs up at the upper register. So just FYI, you're going to be frustrated because people will say, oh, you hear that? And you'll be like, nope, nope, not hearing that. My husband, he couldn't hear that at all. He can't hear a titmouse. So, all right, here's another one, black pole warbler. If anything, you might confuse this guy with the chickadee because of the black cap, but of course, a chickadee has a black throat as well and doesn't have all this striping. But make a note of the pinkish legs and the white throat, as I said. And it is unusual here because normally it migrates much farther east. In fact, in the fall, this little bird that might weigh an ounce, it flies from New England over the Atlantic Ocean all the way to South America without stopping over on land on the way. It can take up to 3 days for it to make that journey across open water, this little tiny warbler. It nests very far north in the boreal forest. American redstart. So this is the male American redstart. We call this often the Halloween bird. And you can hear the song here. Redstarts have windows in their tail. So basically, if you're looking at the tail, it has little cutouts of color. In the case of the male, it's orange. And the female, it's yellow. And the young male, it'll be orange as well. And why it's called a red start when it's orange and not red, I do not know. People ask me that all the time and I do not know the answer. The male is black and orange. The female is gray and yellow. Sometimes we'll call her a yellow start instead of a red start. I guess we should call them orange starts and yellow starts instead of any of them red starts. The juvenile is male is gray and orange. This does breed in Louisiana, generally farther north than Baton Rouge area. And it is one of the most common fall warblers. And the interesting thing about them, they take that tail with the windows and they flash it back and forth. And so they're often pretty visible as far as warblers are concerned because they're doing a lot of that tail flashing. And the song is the z-z-z-z-zit with a sneeze at the end. I like that. Two different song types. We'll try that one. This is the one I hear most often. So I think that's the Z, that one. Black-throated blue. Isn't this a pretty bird? We do not get many of these. They are pretty rare. When one shows up, generally people come a running. I remember one stayed on Grand Isle for about 2 weeks, and I think everybody in Louisiana got to see that bird. But they take a different route other than through Louisiana, so we generally don't see them very much. And the male is very distinctive. He's pretty easy to tell. The female, which is what you see below, not so much. The most distinctive feature for her, because she looks like a couple of other warblers with the greenish back. Oh, the greenish back and the yellowish front. She has this little white spot on her wing they describe as a kerchief right here, like him. And so that's a good tell for a female black-throated blue warbler. Cerulean warbler. Isn't this a pretty bird? Cerulean blue. So the male is considerably brighter than the female. She may just be a pale blue or almost a gray. And you also have to remember too that blue, there's no such thing as a blue feather, right? So blue is a product of the structure of the feather reflecting and refracting that light into our eyes. So if the light is not right, you're not going to see this bird as blue. If it's out in the strong sunlight, you may see it as blue. If it's in the shadows, it may just appear to be gray. This is one that the cerulean warbler is one, if we looked at it in the Warbler Guide app, you would see that it stays up in the top of the canopy, which is another point against seeing it because it's often going to be at the tippy top of the tree. Here we have the northern parula. Blue and yellow, we saw a picture of it earlier. And notice that the yellow goes all the way up into the bill. Like the underside of the bill is yellow as well. Blue on the head, blue on the wings, two wide white wing bars, white eye arcs, and a white belly. So the male and the female are similar. The female will be more drab. And notice this patch right here. I don't even know what color that is. It's sort of greenish, right? It's not really olive, but it's like yellow and blue feathers mixed together to make greenish feathers. Yeah, I mean, it's just this sort of an indescribable color.
That's on the nape?
It's on the back. It's the up between the wings, basically below the nape and across the shoulders, if you will. So when you see this bird, sometimes you'll see it from the side, and it's very distinctive. I mean, I was noticing it on birds that I saw this morning, and the only one that has that particular color on the back. It nests in our cypress swamps in Spanish moss. I should say it nests in Spanish moss. It does not require a swamp. So if you have live oak trees with Spanish moss, you may have nesting northern parulas. There are some places in the town of Ponchatoula where I live that have northern parulas, and they're not cypress tupelo swamp. So it really is not the swamp, it's the moss that they're looking for. And these birds generally arrive at the end of very end of February, early March. And the song is an ascending buzzy trill. If you go, like if you were to go to the Joyce Boardwalk right now, you'd hear half a dozen of them singing up a storm. Ascending buzzy trill. And they, I think you can see it in this one. He's singing. Yeah, he's singing, but he's not doing it as much because they tend to, when they're singing, they throw their head back and they sing for their whole body. There's just like joy exuding from them. It's just wonderful. All right, then we have, so those are the warblers that are pretty easy to tell apart. And then we get into warblers like this, little brown warblers. So one of the things about little brown warblers, they're often low to the ground because they're going to be disguised in the branches and leaves and the litter. I don't like to use the word litter, but on the ground, not human litter, but leaf litter on the ground. One of these is the Swainson's warbler. Generally, it stays out of sight, and because our eyes just can't pick it out, basically. The easiest time to see this warbler is during breeding season when it is singing, because then you have a chance of finding it. So the song is this Weeda Weeda Whippoorwill, which I'll play in just a second. This bird, the numbers are seriously declining because of things like fire ants and other impacts to ground nesting birds. But it does nest in Louisiana in the Atchafalaya Basin, the Pearl River Basin, in East Baton Rouge Parish. There are nesting Swainson's warblers at Frenchtown Conservation Area, at Waddell. So the northern part of the parish that still has enough forest cover to hold birds like this. But the numbers are declining. And the Swainson's warbler, as I said, little brown bird. So this is the way that it forages. So like a thrasher or a sparrow, it's basically walking on the ground, picking up leaves, looking for insects. What's that? Except for fire. It might eat them too, but there's too many of them. So a worm-eating warbler, one of the worst names. Why couldn't they come up with something else? This is a spectacular bird. I just love it. With that buffy and black head. And all warblers are worm-eating, so I don't know why they picked that name out for this particular guy, but he often forages in dead hanging leaves because caterpillars will have overwintered there. So as he's coming in the spring, that's a good place to find him. They do nest in Louisiana, so in drier upland areas like St. Francisville or young pine forests, where the pine trees are less than about that big around, you can find worm-eating warblers. And the song is very similar to a pine warbler, so you have to, if you're looking for him specifically, you got to pay close attention. So that's worm-eating warbler. It's often described as being drier than a pine warbler. I'll play pine in just a second. So there's the worm-eating. So that one, it's the same sort of pattern, but this one sounds more musical, I think. The other one sounds drier, flatter. But if you're in a pine forest, you could have both of them. So gotta be careful. And then we have the oven bird. This is one of my favorites. It can be mistaken for a thrush, but thrushes hop. So wood thrush, Swainson's thrush, gray cheek thrush, hermit thrush, they will hop on the forest floor. This guy walks with attitude, I might say. Okay. He has beautiful stripes on his forehead, this great big eye ring, which makes him look really surprised. And he just struts around on the forest floor. This does not nest in Louisiana. We only see this in migration. Then we have the water thrushes, not related to a thrush. They are warblers, which just have the unfortunate name of water thrush. Now, the good news is they're usually associated with water, so at least they got that part right. We have two species, the northern and Louisiana. And you would think that the Louisiana is most common here. That would be wrong. So Louisiana water thrush has a wider white eyebrow, a clear throat. So if you get a look at the throat, it does not have striping on the throat. And it has usually buffy flanks. So the area under the back of the wing on the body would be buffy. The northern water thrush is buffier overall, and it has a more even eyebrow. They both bob their tail as they forage on ground and muddy edges, just like you saw in this video here. They both do this tail bobbing thing. I have heard it said, but I have not ground truthed, that the northern water thrush will bob its tail up and down, where the Louisiana water thrush will sashay side to side, like New Orleans lady. But if I look at this northern water thrush, I think, well, he's doing some sashaying too, so I don't know about that. You might ask why it's called the Louisiana water thrush. Neither one of these water thrushes nests in Louisiana. And it's because Louisiana used to be a whole lot bigger than it is now. So a lot of these birds were named in the time of the Louisiana Purchase. But it specifically with the Louisiana water thrush, it was probably collected it was probably collected somewhere inside the boundaries of the Louisiana, what is now the Louisiana, referred to as the Louisiana Purchase. All right, so that's the little brown warblers. Now we go to yellow warblers. So there are warblers that are yellow, and then there is the yellow warbler. Okay, this is the yellow warbler, capital Y, capital W. The male is brighter on the chest than the female. You can see them both here. And he has these chestnut stripes on his chest. That staining on the female right there is likely from mulberries. And that is an orchard oriole, by the way, not even a warbler. He photobombed my yellow warbler video there. This is the only warbler that is completely yellow underneath. So if you were to look in the warbler guide at that picture from underneath, it would be yellow from the bill all the way to the end of the tail. And will be the only warbler that is like that. It's probably from mulberries, from something that she was eating. This one does not nest in Louisiana. It is very numerous up north, like one of the most common warblers up north. And we see it generally very commonly seen in both spring and fall, just because the numbers are so high. We start seeing the fall migrants of the yellow warblers in August. And there have been days at the Joyce Boardwalk. It's right near my house. That's why I keep referring to it. It's kind of my patch, right? Where I can go very easily, just 5 minutes away. The parking lot is maybe a couple 100 feet long. And there have been times when I've had a dozen yellow warblers just in that parking lot. So if you were to take that and multiply that by all of Louisiana, you can just imagine how many yellow warblers there must be at that time. Prothonotary warbler, the golden swamp canary. Don't call it that. Learn to say prothonotary warbler. People ask where the name came from, so that refers to an official in the Catholic Church that wore yellow robes. Was called the prothonotary. So why they stuck this poor bird with that, I don't know, but that's his name, prothonotary warbler. Bright yellow warbler. Here's the female with some nesting material. This is one that nests in most of the eastern part of the US, but needs a particular type of habitat. It really likes our cypress tupelo swamps, the wetter area like that. And all the prothonotary warblers go down to the northern coast or the northern part of South America. And we know this, we're learning this because of projects like this. So the Louisiana Bird Observatory has been studying the prothonotary with these little geolocators. So this little backpack is installed on the bird. They have this device has to be, it doesn't report in real time like a satellite tracker. Basically, it's collecting solar data and logging it on the chip on the device. And it has to be retrieved, and that device needs to be read on a computer. So the good news about prothonotary warblers is they're extremely site loyal to where they nested the previous year, and they nest in boxes. So if you go to Bluebonnet Swamp, for example, where they started this project, you'll see these bird nest boxes out in the swamp, and they're usually for prothonotary warblers. And the same warbler may return, and they'll be able to catch him and get the geolocator off, and it'll tell exactly where he was in the world from the time the geolocator was installed until the time that they remove it from the bird. So it gives us so much information about the life cycle of the bird. Prothonotaries are cavity nesters. They don't just nest in man-made boxes. They will nest in natural cavities as well. Here's a pair that were nesting at the Joyce Boardwalk, and there's a clutch of 5 or 6 babies. There's the female on the right and the male on the left, sharing duties. They're changing the diapers there. The daddy took it out and mama's like, I got it. Prothonotaries will nest in other containers. So I had people tell me they nest in flower pots. They nest in, one friend said that they nested in the cup holder in her husband's exercise bike that was out on the carport. So he couldn't use his bike for a month. He was very upset. He was not. It's like, oh, darn, I can't use an exercise bike for the next month. Another yellow one that looks very similar to the prothonotary. If you take a prothonotary, you add some eye makeup and a couple of blotches on the wings, wide wing bars, you have the blue-winged warbler. And this is one that just comes through in migration. It nests in the upper part of the US. The song is a very high buzzy. Oh, I didn't play the prothonotary song. Let me play that because that's one that you absolutely will see. And they're not very shy. If you go to Bluebonnet Swamp, once they arrive and listen, you will not only hear them, but see them as well. So they'll come right out. And the mnemonic for the prothonotary is sweet, 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 sweet. All right, blue-winged warbler. So very buzzy. It describes it as very insect-like. And a lot of these warblers, if they're just passing through, they may just be doing quiet songs and not the I'm on territory, you know, I'm trying to attract a female type song. You might just hear little quiet songs. This is one that does nest here, the hooded warbler. Nests in our forests. Basically, the next layer up from a cypress tupelo forest, so bottomland hardwood, upland hardwood forests. And this song can be heard everywhere in the summertime. The hooded warbler. Hooded warbler. The female hood is much more subtle, so it's sort of an olive color rather than black. And there we have the song mnemonic, tweet, tweet, tweetio. Kentucky warbler nests in the same type of habitat as a hooded warbler. But this guy just has these big lamb chop sideburns, right? This black on the side of the face. Tends to stay low to the ground like the hooded warbler, nests in fairly dense woods. And the song is churry, churry, churry. So somebody described the song to me as galloping, right? Which then I put the galloping together with the Kentucky Derby. You remember Kentucky warbler? And I asked my friend Crystal about, so what does galloping make you think of? Or what does Kentucky make you think? That's what it was. What does Kentucky make you think of? She said chicken. I said, no. Horses. So everybody, I mean, that's what. And so I asked my daughter the same thing. What does Kentucky make you think of? And she said chicken too. I said, well, obviously this is not going to work. Kentucky fried chicken. All right, so here we have another one with black very close to basically on the face. So if you compare these two, the Kentucky has it across the face, but he's got this yellow eyebrow, which just makes it look like he's got sideburns, as opposed to this common yellow throat that has a very distinctive black mask, a black mask with white above it. And these guys are definitely found low, usually near wet areas. They say if you need to find water, then find a common yellowthroat and he'll lead you to water. So there you go. If you're lost in the woods, there you go. Find a common yellowthroat. The call is a distinctive check, 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 check. And the song is witchety, witchety. This is probably one of the easiest warbler songs to learn. Sounds to learn. Is that check sounds very distinctive. So and the song, witchety, witchety, witchety. Palm warbler. This guy is hardly ever associated with any kind of palm. So, you know, he probably was collected in or near a palm tree, which is how he got the name, but he doesn't have any special association with palm trees. But he is a tail bobber. So as you watch him move around, as he moves around in the tree or on the ground or in the bush, he's going to bob his tail, similar to the water thrushes. But he doesn't walk on the ground like the water thrushes do. He will often forage on the ground. And I was just commenting to someone that palm warblers seem to have a strange affinity for chain link fences. Because if I see them in an area and there is a chain link fence, the palm warblers will be in the fence, in the little diamonds on the fence. I don't know why they like that, but there you go. Another one that does not nest in Louisiana, commonly found in the winter. The song is a flat, buzzy trill. See that? So that also sounds similar to the worm-eating warbler, the pine warbler, that flat trill. But a distinction would be if you heard this song, if you heard a song similar to that, you would more likely suspect the pine warbler or the worm-eating, because this one does not sing on territory because it doesn't breed here. Okay, so, and notice the variation. So this is a palm warbler. It tends to have this rusty brown cap, but it always has yellow under the tail. But then there's the eastern variety that is much more yellow. Even though this is supposed to be the eastern palm warbler, I have very, very seldom seen a palm warbler this yellow. Most of the time, they look more like this, sort of faintly brown and stripy, yellow under the tail. All right, gray-headed warblers. Basically, If you see a gray-headed warbler, you want to sit up and pay attention, because all of them are going to be good warblers. And by that, I mean generally less expected, more unusual in Louisiana. There's a couple that I didn't even mention here because they will be so unusual for Louisiana. But here are a couple that are more common, especially the Nashville. So the Nashville warbler on the, oh, I have it backwards, sorry. The morning warbler is on the right of the screen. The Nashville is on the left. I think when I redid my PowerPoint, it switched my pictures around. The Nashville would be much more commonly seen. The morning warbler is one of those, when somebody sees one, everybody gets excited and goes to find it because they're unusual. And they're real skulky, and they stay underneath vegetation and kind of out of sight. And with that coloring, they hide really well. This is another one that is a favorite, also tends to stay very low, very distinctive necklace with the Canada warbler. Another one that does not nest in Louisiana, only seen in migration. All right, now we get into those warblers that are yellow with variable black striping. Black-throated green is one of them. Now, I assume he's basically named for this, this back patch here, which is like the northern parula, is a color that is very hard to describe. It's made up of lots of different colors, sort of olivey, not really, I don't know, but the black throat is very, very obvious. This olive back and black and white wings, white with black stripes. Does not nest in Louisiana, but this is a very common spring migrant for us. You're going to start seeing those in just a couple of weeks. And the black-throated green. Zee, or zee. Sort of buzzy. And I have had them sing here, but again, it's sort of a quiet song because they're not on nesting territory here. A lot of times you're going to see them from underneath. So this is the view of the black-throated green that you want to get in your head, because this is what you're going to see. The Blackburnian warbler. This is a male Blackburnian warbler with his bright orange throat, orange and black face, black and white wings. Wonderful warbler. Looks like he's on fire. The male is brighter than the female, and the orange can vary in intensity. So the females can be almost yellow instead of orange. And this one, again, does not nest in Louisiana. It's just passing through. So we're not going to hear too much singing from the Blackburnian. A couple different variations. And it describes it, the last note being so high, some people cannot hear it. Can y'all hear that last part? It really does get high. Magnolia warbler, this is another really common one for us. So get to know this one. This is the magnolia in spring. This is what he's going to look like in the fall. So the plumage changes significantly after breeding season. It's just passing through. So we may not hear it singing, but let's play the song. And these guys often are like eye level rather than way up in the canopy, which is nice. But for a magnolia warbler, the tail is the tell. So a magnolia warbler is the only one with a well, even this guy is flitting around in the tree in the fall, so he's much less colorful. He's sort of gray and yellow. If you can see from underneath and get a look at that tail and see the black ends to the tail, then you know you absolutely have a magnolia warbler. Because he's the only one with a tail like that. There we got a little view of the tail. And we have the prairie warbler, another beautiful one. This one does nest in Louisiana, in the Florida parishes in the northwest part of the state. So this prefers young pine forests. So much of our state is pine plantation. This is one of the good things that comes out of that. The prairie warblers like that young pine plantation habitat. And the song is an ascending Z, 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 Z. If you don't see a prairie warbler in migration and you want to see one, ask me and I can tell you where to find it north of Ponchatoula. It sort of sounds bouncy, like ball bouncy, like really pretty, very distinctive. Pretty bird. All right, yellow-throated warbler. This is one of our most common ones in the cypress tupelo swamps. So it arrives about the same time with the northern parula. And the song is one to get to know because that's going to alert you to the presence of the yellow-throated warbler. And it's the northern parula. So if you're in a cypress tupelo forest, the northern parulas are generally going to be mid-story. The yellow-throated warblers are going to be up at the top. So they're, you know, up 100 feet up. They're harder to see, but if you listen and can hone in on the song, that'll tell you where they are. Sometimes they'll come lower, but very often they're very high up in the trees. But it's that choo 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 choo. It's almost like the prothonotary warbler that's described as sweet, 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 except it speeds up at the end. So it's sweet, 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 sweet. And prothonotaries never go 100 feet up. And I say never, don't mean never, I mean generally never. So if you hear one that's doing sweet, 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 but at the very tippy top of a tall cypress tree, it's probably the yellow-throated warbler, not the prothonotary, because they tend to stay low. Here's his song too. It's not. Yeah. I'm gonna do the speaker very well. Anyway. Busy, beautiful little birds. Cape May warbler. So this is another variation on yellow. But again, it's got this patch on the upper back that is very hard to describe. It's sort of olive black. Black cap, black stripes on yellow belly, and this chestnut patch on his cheek. And that chestnut patch on his cheek is what often tells you, what often cues you into the fact that it's a Cape May warbler. This is one that will get people running down in Cameron Parish or on Grand Isle because we don't get many of these birds. And they're really pretty. They have a sweet tooth. They love to eat the mulberry fruit. They eat flowers. So people will come running to see this guy. In fact, this individual was one that stayed in this mulberry tree for like 2 days, eating fruit. And again, that chestnut patch is just really stands out. Cape May warbler. This one, golden winged warbler. This is another one that we get very few of in Louisiana. pretty distinctive with the gold color on the wing, as opposed to most of them have white. But we don't get very many of these, so not commonly seen in migration. All right, what is this one? Anybody know off the top of your head? If you have been out birding this winter, you have seen this bird, yellow-rumped warbler, in breeding plumage, as opposed to this, which is what we've been looking at all winter, right? So this is our most common winter warbler, and right now they're getting really messy. If you see them, because they're starting to molt all those black feathers in, and they look really molty. That's what I call them. The plumage is changing. And this is another one that's going to nest very far north, but it stays with us in the wintertime. All right, it's about 3:30. We've been at this for an hour and a half. We are going to stop and take a break. So folks at home, I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to pause recording, if I can find it. There we go. I got to back up and repeat that. So now we're going to get into other warblers that don't fall into the category of the warblers with yellow on them. Like this one, the Tennessee warbler, which is often described as green. It's usually gray-headed, which will distinguish it from other warblers, and has a little bit of an eye line, but the back is a greenish color. It's one that does breed far north in the boreal forest in Canada, only passing through. And the song is a three-part song, which Tennessee has 3 syllables, and that's one of the ways to remember it. Not that it sounds like Tennessee, but 3 syllables. Yeah. This is one I found that does sing in Louisiana. Even though it doesn't nest here, it is one that does sing here. So if you're using Merlin, it's probably going to identify it for you. It has white undertail coverts, and that's important because it's often confused with the orange-crowned warbler. The orange-crowned warbler is another very drab warbler, sort of yellowish green, but it has yellow undertail covert. So the Tennessee has white undertail, the orange-crowned has yellow. The orange-crowned doesn't have an orange crown, or at least not one that most of us will see. There are some burnt orange feathers underneath the crown feathers that sometimes, the only time I've seen it is when an orange crown warbler was bathing. So those feathers were all messed up and parted, and you could see a little bit of orange color. But generally, you're not going to see the orange crown. The bay-breasted warbler. So really pretty warbler. This is one of the later arrivals. So generally, the very end part of April, the first week or 2 of May is when the bay-breasted warbler comes through. And it, in warbler terms, it moves more slowly than other warblers. So a lot of warblers are just flitting, looking for food constantly. The bay-breasted is much more deliberate and moves more slowly. Sometimes it's confused with the chestnut-sided warbler because it arrives at about the same time, and it has some bay color near the breast, but the chestnut-sided has yellow on the top of the head, unlike the bay-breasted, which has no yellow. So the chestnut-sided and the bay-breasted tend to come at about the same time. Another one that's just passing through. This is the chestnut-sided warbler in the fall. So this is one of those that really does change its whole personality in the fall. And here we have a bird that used to be a warbler and now it's not. So superficially looks very much like a warbler, but it's a little bit larger. This is a yellow-breasted chat. Depending on the age of your book, it may actually be listed with the warblers, but they have taken it out of the warbler category now, and it's actually in its own genus. For a while, they stuck it in with the blackbirds and orioles, and now it's in its own genus. So they don't really know what to make of this bird. It is a really amusing bird if you ever see it in real life. It has this strange song that sort of goes all over the place. And when it flies, like one of the best places to see it is on Whiskey Bay Road off the interstate there. And it'll fly from a tree to the power line and back again. And it looks like it can barely make it. Like it tries to fly vertically. And you think, how did this warbler fly for 1,000 miles? It can barely make it across the street. But that flight must have something to do with its display because it's very deliberate. So very funny bird. Not yet. No, they're going to be arriving with all the warblers. So other birds that you might mistake for warblers include the vireos. They're also going to be in the canopy, and depending on the type of vireo, they may be low like this white-eyed vireo, or high like a red-throated, a red-eyed or a yellow-throated vireo. They're insect gleaners. They usually hunt from underneath, so they have a different feeding style than a warbler does, but they are approximately the same size. And if you can get a good look at it, like this particular look, you can see that the bill is actually hooked at the end. So it's got a little bit thicker bill with a little hook at the end. And that's one of the tells for a vireo as opposed to a warbler. The white-eyed vireo usually stays low in tangled vines and brush, so less than 12 or 15 feet. And the mnemonic for the song is quick, bring me a beer, chick. Quick, bring me a beer, chick. Let me play that for you. I found with all the years that I've taught classes, this is one of the first ones that people learn. Yeah, he's doing it differently. So this is more like, quick, bring me a beer. Quick, bring me a beer. He doesn't have the chick on the end. There, he put the chick on the end. And then he does the chickapee. Quick, chickapee, that must be her name, chickapee. So this bird, because it is yellow and green, it's very difficult to see in that fresh spring foliage. You're going to hear it 100 times more than you're going to actually see this bird. But it does nest in Louisiana. We have some that spend all winter with us, but a lot of the northern birds come down in our area for the winter and are leaving, and then ours start singing. So ours are already on territory and singing. Then we have the yellow-throated vireo. This is one that generally migrates away and returns in the spring, and these guys are back now. So one of the distinctive features of these two vireos is the spectacles. So the white-eyed vireo had a go back here. So it has these yellow spectacles. This the eye ring goes around and then over to the base of the bill, and the yellow throated vireo has that same thing. In the wintertime, we have the blue-headed vireo, which has white spectacles. The song is very similar to the red-eyed vireo, but it's burrier. That is meaningful to you. So I'll play that one. And this can be a tough tell apart between the yellow-throated vireo and the red-eyed vireo. We play so the red-eyed vireo is similar, but it's faster. And it's a little sweeter, I guess, than the yellow-throated vireo. There's the red-eyed vireo. Learn this bird. When I first started going down to Grand Isle with people, with a few friends, we'd be birding and this was, Jane, what's that bird? It's a red-eyed vireo. Jenny, what's this bird? It's a red-eyed vireo. What's this? It's a red-eyed vireo. It's a red-eyed vireo. It's a red-eyed vireo. You're gonna see a million of them. Learn this bird so that you don't have to keep asking about it. Don't expect to see a red eye because it does have a red eye, but the light has to shine just right in order for you to get the red out of the eye. But you see that it's basically, sort of long, very horizontal bird. It looks like somebody took the head and sort of pinched it forward. And it again has that little hook on the end of the bill, like a warbler, but acts very much like a warbler. You might mistake it for a worm-eating warbler because of the stripes on the head, but the worm-eating is more buffy with the black stripes, and they move around differently. These do nest in Louisiana, so you're going to hear them all summer long. They're going to be way high in the trees, though. So even though you are going to see a million red-eyed vireos, you got to look at every single one of them, because one of them may turn out to be a black whiskered vireo. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's the whisker. That's what makes this an extremely rare bird for Louisiana, as opposed to the extremely common red-eyed vireo, that whisker. So, right there. Yeah, it's got a little bit of black coming down. So it has the black stripes on the head, but then it's got this little black stripe coming down from the bill. And that makes this bird a very big deal, because this is a Caribbean bird. It's only supposed to come into Florida, but occasionally shows up in Louisiana. I guess on average, we get one a year that is detected. And I suspect there are more, but people get so tired of looking at red-eyed vireos, they just stop looking. Philadelphia and warbling vireos, these two are pass-through vireos. They're not going to nest here in Louisiana. And you can see these both look sweeter than the red-eyed vireo, right? If we go back to the red-eye for a second, you remember I've described it as somebody took the head and just pulled it out long way, made it elongated, and compare that with these two pretty birds. These two tend to look sweeter. They are very similar, but the Philadelphia tends to be yellower than the warbling vireo. And then we get into thrushes. So like sparrows, in that they're all little brown birds, but just not as many of them. So here we have the common thrushes that we're going to see in migration. And it's almost like there's a thrush train and all the thrushes get on it at the same time, because there'll be no thrushes and then the woods will be full of thrushes. Thrushes generally land on the ground, and thrushes hop. So if you think of an American robin is in the thrush family, and you think of how a robin hops around on the grass, that's how these guys act as well. So in the wintertime, we have the hermit thrush. He's pretty much leaving and going north. And these are the four, they're going to start showing up. The wood thrush actually nests here, very rusty brown, and has big distinct spots on the belly that come all the way down to the bottom of the body, basically. Then we have the veery, which is also rusty brown, sort of a cinnamon color, but has very, very few spots. Very few spots. Very few. That's hard to say. Very few. Very few. And then we have these two guys. It took me years to tell these two thrushes apart. So just beware. What they say is the gray-cheeked thrush has a cooler face than the warm, buffy face of the Swainson's thrush. And that's about all you got to tell them apart. Because it's gray, so it has the cool tones, bluer tones, as opposed to buffy with the warmer or yellow tones. But in the shadow, under shrubs, that is not always the easiest thing to tell apart. And so you may have to use slashes for that. If you're putting it in eBird, for example, gray cheek / Swainson's, because it's just hard to tell them apart.
What's with Swainson?
So he, like Wilson's and some of the others, Audubon, he was significant in ornithology and had birds named after him. And I can't tell you his history because I don't know it. So buntings and grosbeaks. Oh my. So I always know when it's around the 19th of April, because somebody is going to call me, text me, or email me and say, Jane, I saw this bird at my feeder. And they don't have to say anything else. I know exactly what bird they're talking about. There's a rose-breasted grosbeak, a male rose-breasted grosbeak showed up in their yard. And that's right about the time that the rose-breasted grosbeak show up. The male is very distinctive with this black and white plumage with this big red splotch on the chest. Looks like he's been stabbed in the heart. And this gigantic bill. So grosbeak, big fat beak. All right. Grosbeak. This is the female rose-breasted grosbeak. So she's chunky as well. Brown and stripy, but she's got that huge bill as well and a very distinctive eyebrow. Their call sounds like a sneaker on a wooden gym floor. I think all of you probably have that sound in your head, right? From when you had to go to gym and go to PE in school. Let's see if I can find it. And this is the call, not the song. This is the way they keep track of each other. That. So it sounds like, I don't think my shoe will do it in here, but your sneaker on a gym floor and that squeak that it made, that's what the rose-breasted grosbeak sounds like. And they don't nest here, so you don't often hear them singing, so you don't really have to worry about the song. They travel to the upper US and Canada. But we get a lot of them. And down on the coast, mulberry trees. I don't guarantee many things when it comes to nature, because nature does what she wants, right? But I can pretty much guarantee you, if you go down to the coast and look at a mulberry tree, you are going to see a rose-breasted grosbeak. Blue grosbeak, so about the same size as the rose-breasted grosbeak, but sort of a purpley blue. The male is this beautiful blue color and has two rusty wing bars and a great big bill as well. So these are seed eaters, right? See what he's doing? He took that seed head and he grabbed it with his foot and leaned it over, and now he's picking out all the little seeds out of that seed head. So you would not think that that would be very nutritious, but it's got a lot of seeds in there, and that's what keeps him going. Unfortunately, we don't leave a lot of weeds. The best place to find these is along roadsides before they mow. Unfortunately, then they mow, and then they're all gone. And the grosbeaks too. They nest in Louisiana. They're very common. Yes, very common. And here we have, but you gotta, one, learn the song, and then two, remember there's no such thing as a blue feather, right? So that blue is not going to show unless you see it reflected. You know, you're gonna have to see it in bright sunlight. Here's the male with the rusty wing bars. Here's immature male that's sort of halfway between, or this could be an adult male after breeding season where the blue's wearing off. And then this is a female. The female also has the rusty wing bars. They're just harder to see because she's all kind of rusty. But remember the wing bars, because indigo buntings, which these are often confused with, do not have these wing bars. Let's back up. Here's the indigo bunting. So it's more of a teal or obviously indigo blue. And notice that it doesn't have, it might have dark edges to the wings, right? They may actually look like the edges of the wings are dark, but it's not wing bars, not the rusty wing bars like the blue grosbeak. And even this guy, so this is an immature male that is still sort of somewhere in between brown and blue. But he does not have wing bars. He's got some brown on him, but not the rusty wing bars. These guys are eating sow thistle, which is one of those weeds that everybody loves to hate, but man, it provides lots of food for these birds. Well, I let it grow in my yard as long as my husband will put up with it. Yeah,
With the beak one is smaller than the.
Yeah. yes, yes, the beak will be smaller, yeah. They're both kind of silvery, but it is a smaller, the whole bird is smaller. And somehow the blue grosbeak's head, he usually has the feathers on the top of his head raised up, so it almost makes it look like a crown. But that's not 100%. So here we have the male in spring and the female. The indigo bunting is one of those. I remember the first year, one of the earliest years I was birding, somebody had posted in the fall in September or something that there were all these indigo buntings down in the levee by the vet school at LSU. So I ran down there and I'm looking and all I see is little brown birds hopping around. Like, where's the indigo buntings? Those are the indigo buntings. So in the fall, all that blue wears off. They might have a little bit of blue on their wings, a little bit on their tail, but mostly all the indigo buntings are brown in the fall. You got to wait for them to make a new crop of feathers in the spring and come back electric blue. And they do nest in Louisiana, mainly above I-10, in like in Tangipahoa Parish, for example, the northern part of the parish, they absolutely nest. And here we have a contrast of the two. So you can see the bill is larger, the shape is different. They tend to be, the grosbeak tends to be a more purpley blue as opposed to this teal blue, lighter blue of the indigo bunting. Oops. Ooh, that doesn't take me back to- All right, and then of course we have the pièce de résistance, the painted bunting, the rainbow bird, which has all the colors on it. This video was actually taken on the sidewalk, on the path in the Groletta tract on Grand Isle a couple of years ago. So it had rained, the sun warmed up this puddle and there were all sorts of birds bathing in the puddle. Painted bunting nests all over Louisiana. It is not a rare bird. You can find it everywhere. It is difficult to find because people don't know what to look for. So the best place to look is forest edges. One of the best places is along the Atchafalaya levee. But one, you want to learn the song, and two, you want to look for red. You don't think about that because you think you're looking for a bird that's all rainbow colored. But the blue is not going to show up necessarily. That green is going to blend in. It's the red that your eye is going to notice. But we discount all the red birds as cardinals and we don't look twice at them. So if you learn the song and you know he's there somewhere, and then you look for a red thing moving around, then you have a good chance of finding a painted bunting. But they really are pretty common. I used to do a breeding bird survey route from Gibson, Louisiana, which is down by Sycamore State Park. And it went slightly north to Jeanerette from there. And painted buntings were one of my most common birds along that breeding bird survey. Orchard orioles. So this is one, these will start arriving just any day. This is one that nests in our area. These orioles nest in our area. They nest in Spanish moss, or they build a typical oriole pouch-like nest. They have a sweet tooth. They will come to oranges. They will come to hummingbird feeders. They will eat flowers. So giant Turk's cap or any kind of Turk's cap you might have, or bottle brush might attract orchard orioles. So this is the adult male on the left, black and sort of a burnt orange color. This is the female, yellow with these wing bars, or wing edges is more precise, I think. And this is the immature male. So this is the second year male, just has this black face. And I have seen immature males actually starting a nest. I mean, pairing up with a female and actually starting a nest. So even though they haven't molted to their full adult plumage, they're either helping with the nesting or they are mating already. So Baltimore orioles. So this is one that we will see in migration. But they do nest in Louisiana, and around here, I have watched a couple of nests go through their whole process. One down at Capitol Lake one year. There was one in a tree right by Mike Anderson's on Lee Drive. So they like cottonwood trees next to water generally. And Baltimore Orioles can be attracted with oranges or hummingbird feeders. They have sweet tooth too. Cuckoos, rain crows. Anybody ever heard it referred to as rain crow? So the old folks would call it that and say that it predicted rain, which I don't believe to be true, but it's kind of interesting. This is what it sounds like. Yellow-billed cuckoo. And yellow-billed cuckoo, so you can see how this one is just sitting there in the shadows. That is what they do. You'll often hear them, and they're really hard to find because they're brown on the back, and they will just sit in the shadows all day long and not move and not let you see them. You got to work pretty hard for a cuckoo. If they do move, they're a big bird. They're this big. So if they do move, you have a good chance of seeing it, but then it'll hide again. The yellow-billed cuckoo is the common one. They're going to come in. We'll see a lot of them during migration, and then they'll be on territory through the summer. They love caterpillars. They're one of the few birds that actually eat those stinging caterpillars, buck moth caterpillars. The black-billed cuckoo is another cuckoo that we get a few of in spring migration. They don't nest here, but they're rare in Louisiana. Wherever they are seen, they are rare. So yellow-billed, black-billed, not only is the bill different, but the eye ring, the black-billed cuckoo's eye ring is red instead of yellow. No, dark, sorry. Sorry, Jennifer. Yeah, isn't that crazy? So yeah, I put that note in because Julie Zigfus wrote this book about in the nest, where she documents the lives of birds like through the nesting process. And she found that a yellow-billed cuckoo, so it hatches, and 9 days later, this chick has enough feathers on it to actually fledge, and not necessarily fly, but fledge enough to move around on its own after only 9 days. Those feathers, it must hurt how fast those feathers grow. I mean, they have to poke right through the skin and just be there. Plus the baby has to be pretty large for it to be that developed to grow that quickly. And there are some others, like a Carolina wren is about 12 to 14 days. Prothonotary warbler can be 11 to 14 days. So there's others that are short periods, but 9 days for a bird that size. So the European, so if you've heard of cuckoos being nest parasites, it's the European cuckoos, not our cuckoos. Okay, so a nest parasite is a bird that lays its eggs in other bird nests, and the other bird fosters that chick until it's grown, the brown-headed cowbird. So our nest parasite, or common nest parasite in Louisiana, and really in the US, is the brown-headed cowbird. Cuckoos raise their own chicks. Okay, but in Europe, the European cuckoos, they are nest parasites, and they will dump their eggs in other birds' nests. So it is sort of an interesting thing, because supposedly our brown-headed cowbirds did it because they moved with the bison, so they didn't have the time to nest to stay, because they had to keep moving with the bison. But a blackbird expert has discounted that. And if that's not the case, then it's just an interesting question about why is it that they do this? It's even more interesting that they wake up one day and realize they're brown-headed cowbirds, and they leave their foster parents and go off and be a brown-headed cowbird. Because other birds, like ducks, if they imprint on people, they will think they're a people for their entire life. So it's really interesting that they do that. Flycatchers. So we have several types of flycatchers that we're going to see through the spring. The great crested flycatcher is a common nester in Louisiana. Often people have said, well, I've never heard or seen this bird. And I bet you've heard it and you just didn't know what you were listening to, because they're very common. They will use old woodpecker holes. This is their call. And once they start arriving, listen for this, and I bet you will hear it on a daily basis if you've got big trees around your home, because they are up there. And here's a great crested flycatcher. So they don't just eat insects. They're not just fly catching. This guy's eating an animal, but he has to tenderize it first. A lizard. Eastern kingbird. I love this bird. So this guy, his scientific name is Tyrannus tyrannus. He's 8 inches tall and he thinks he's a T-Rex. He is a badass. Anybody that comes close to where his nest is, he is going to take them on. There are pictures on the internet of Eastern kingbirds on the backs of red-tailed hawks, driving the hawks away from their nesting areas. So, and his call, I love his call too, because to me, it sounds like a Star Wars laser gun or something. Bird. Eastern kingbird. So what you want to notice for this guy, he's black and white, and he has this white band at the end of the tail. See which call it is. I think it's this one. So it sounds sort of like zeep, 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 like a laser gun to me. They like open fields where they can, see the territory and see all the people that might be invading their territory, the other birds that might be invading their territory. This,
If they're doing barbed wire.
no, that's the loggerhead shrike.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, loggerhead shrike. Scissortail flycatcher. So these are mostly found in the western part of the state, so the southwestern, and they breed starting at about Alexandria north on the western part of the state up to Shreveport area. Here in the Baton Rouge area, in October, we see them a lot on River Road, especially. If you drive down River Road, you can see them on the power lines very often. So scissortail flycatcher, and you might mistake it for a mockingbird if you're just driving past, but if it's an adult male and you can see that super long tail, then you've got something different. Tanagers. So we have a couple of different tanagers. The males of our two tanagers are bright red. The scarlet tanager on the right has dark wings, and the summer tanager is all red. He's closely related to a cardinal. He's sort of cardinal red, where the scarlet tanager is like velvet red. And the females of both are yellow. So in this case, the female summer is here on the right with that big sort of pinkish bill. The scarlet tanager female is here on the left. So she looks yellow but has dark wings. And the scarlet tanagers are passing through. They don't breed here. The summer tanagers will stay all summer. This is another one we overlook because it's a red bird and we think, oh, that's a cardinal that just flew by, when actually it could be a summer tanager. Yes, they do. They tend to be high up in the canopy as opposed to down low like our cardinals. And what's this one? I call it a tie-dyed tanager. So this is a young male, because the young ones start out looking like this. And then as they molt in their second year and they're coming into their adult plumage, they are molting away their yellow feathers and molting in the red ones. And so they end up with both. So they're sort of tie-dyed color. And you'll see some of these in the spring. That's summer, yeah. All right, we're getting to the end. Are y'all ready for your quiz? Have you been taking good notes? You didn't know there was going to be a quiz. Now, I can't tell you ahead of time because people get really, really worried about a quiz. It's this mental block they have from high school. So your quiz is on your own, but there are quizzes out there. I do highly recommend them. So here are a few: birdingquiz.com. And you can pick beginner, intermediate, advanced. You can even pick like just warblers. You can go through all the warblers and test yourselves on warblers. Birdquiz.net. So again, it has different levels and types of quizzes. Birdphotos.com. This one is more sophisticated because it makes you pick the order, the family, the genera, and then the species. So if you're really nerdy, that's the one you want. And then Sibley, David Sibley, who does as a field guide, he has some quizzes that you can do as well. And then eBird does quizzes. And eBird, this is sneaky, okay? eBird quizzes use photos that eBird users have submitted. So like my photos could end up on the eBird quizzes. And as you do the quizzes, they ask you to rate the photos because eBird's goal is to get all their photos rated. So they ask you to rate photos as you go through. You can go look and see all the ratings on all your pictures. If some people complain about it, like, everybody only gives me a 2, and I think mine is better than that. Yeah, 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 yeah. So I'm not going to waste my time on that. I got better things to do. So, all right. And that brings us to the end here. I do want everybody to be sure to be aware of birdlouisiana.org. So this is your one-stop birding shop, right? If you can't remember something about birds or birding in Louisiana, this is where you go. And you should be able to find the answer. This is all the clubs and organizations, events and festivals, where to go birding, guided field trips, programs, workshops, classes. And there's a thing on the bottom that says ask a question. So if you don't find an answer on the website, then there's a way to ask a question. Those questions come to me. So I also want to say that if you're not already a member of Baton Rouge Audubon or LOS, please consider joining one of those. So, and I will stop sharing here and ask for questions. I'm going to stop recording.